throughout history, people have been inspired by God and they've done things to honor God. And I think when they do things to honor God, the result of the end product is very different than if they did something to honor themselves. Whether it's some sort of mission they're on or some sort of creation of artwork or content, the result when you do it to honor God as opposed to honoring men like yourself, I think the end result is very different. And I think of Christopher Columbus and his epic journeys discovering the new world and how he was inspired by his God through his Catholic beliefs. And a lot of the reason he wanted to do it was to spread the message of Jesus. And even recently, when you think about the cathedral, Notre Dame Cathedral in France, and how many people were upset when it burned down because it wasn't just a building, it was a work of art, it was a thing of beauty, and even non-religious people think it's a tragedy and they want to rebuild it. So keep that in mind. We can either go towards ugliness or we can seek out beauty. And I thought of that today because I came across a news story this is from North Dakota. I'm originally from North Dakota, even though I'm not living there right now. And they posted this story about something going on in South Dakota. The national motto, "In God We Trust," has been painted on prominent walls of 23 public school buildings in Rapid City, South Dakota, a new state law that requires the motto be displayed on public school grounds in prominent locations. Now, I don't really know the details of that story, so I can't really comment on that so much. I was just in South Dakota actually last summer because my 95-year-old grandfather, he moved down there, he moved in with some relatives, and he's right outside of Rapid City. And one thing I noticed when we were down in South Dakota is how many churches you see. And supposedly South Dakota is the most religious state in the entire country. And I think that's based off of how many churches there are per population. But everywhere you go there's churches, and we took my grandpa to a Catholic church down there, and we had a really nice time, lovely state. But anytime there's any mention of God in a news story these days, it triggers people, especially people that don't like God, people that are anti-religion. It triggers something in them, and it triggers these strong emotions in them. And reading the comments was very interesting of this story. Mandy Davidson, she says, "I can't believe how many people think every state should do this!" ! "I think it would be more beneficial for public schools to let kids design and paint their own murals, work together and share the world what inspires them and their classmates, because it matters to everyone, even if what inspires someone else doesn't inspire them. Teach them to trust themselves." And you can see I had a comment on this, and it got some response. "I notice ugly chicks usually don't like God." And that is something that I've noticed, and people notice this so much that it's almost become a cliche, and I feel the need to show you this. If I didn't show you my screen right now, you might not believe me because it's such a cliche. Let's check out what Mandy Davidson actually looks like. Okay, here she is. Let's click on this photo. Clearly, she's not a very attractive lady. How'd you like to wake up next to that, guys? You have a literal purple-haired freak that's anti-God. So why is it that ugly chicks do seem to hate gods? These liberal freaks, every time they want to go against God. Like I said, it's kind of a comparison when you think of the cathedral in France that just burned down and how people respected it as this aesthetic masterpiece and architecture and this thing of beauty. It was a treasure worldwide, not even just for the country of France. It was a great testament to all of Western culture, all of Christian culture, the great things people have done in history to build that and build other places like that, and even non-religious people had to admire it. So there you go. I had to show you that because otherwise I just don't think you'd believe me. These purple-haired freaks. And I don't know if they have some sort of resentment towards God for being that way or if they blame him, but it's a common thing to the point of even becoming a cliche. But I wanted to point this other comment out from this lady. This one really struck me more, actually. She says, "I'm a Christian, But who am I to say my religion is the best? Wasn't the United States founded on the ability to worship as an individual wants? So she says, I'm a Christian, but who am I to say my religion is the best? Well, obviously you're not a Christian because you don't know the first thing about what Christianity says. The most basic things you learn if you go from ground zero to knowing nothing. Some of the most basic things you learn is that this is the only religion. This is the only God, and all other, you're not allowed to worship other gods. What she's actually after, she's after a la carte spirituality. This isn't Christianity. If you go Old Testament, what's the first commandment of the 10 Commandments? You're not supposed to worship other gods. That's number one commandment, and it's set that way because it's the most important thing. You can even go New Testament on this. Jesus made it very clear that he is the way. He is the door. You have to go through him. You don't go through other gods. You don't pick and choose your spirituality. So she's broken at least one commandment in this, but she's broken another possibly because she's lying. Now, maybe she's not knowingly lying, but she should at least know that she's not being truthful. She doesn't believe in Christianity. She doesn't seem to know anything about it, so she certainly doesn't believe it. And one of the requirements to get into heaven is you have to believe Jesus is God with your heart, and you have to confess it with your mouth. You have to say it out loud. Because if you won't say it out loud, that means you don't actually believe it. And I think of like, if you're in an interview and someone says, do you believe Christ is God? Do you believe Jesus is God? And you give an answer like, well, that's a complicated question. That's a complex question. It requires a very long answer, and I don't want to give you a soundbite of me, so I'm just not going to answer it. Well, who did that recently? Jordan Peterson. Now, if that's your answer, you're certainly not a Christian. So there's actually two parts of that command, and this is a requirement, among other things, to get into heaven. You have to believe in your heart that Jesus is God, and you have to say it with your mouth, because clearly, if you're not willing to say it out loud, you don't actually believe it. And conversely, the other part of that is you have to believe it in your heart. So you can't be like these con men do, where they mention Jesus' name and Jesus is Lord and all this, because they're trying to con you and they're trying to build confidence, get your confidence so they can scam you in some way. So it's a two-part command of believing it fully in your heart and also professing it. Now, if that's a requirement, what do you think this lady's odds of getting into heaven are? Well, according to the Christian faith, her odds are slim to none. All someone like this can do is hope for the grace of God when they get up there, which is kind of like a pardon where he says, well, I like you, so I'm going to take you anyways, despite you disobeying. But this is not Christianity. Now, if she said, I'm not a Christian, and who am I to say which religion is best? Well, okay then, that would be fine. That wouldn't be a big deal. At least it would be honest. But what she's actually being here is a false teacher by saying, I'm a Christian, and who am I to say my religion is best? Well, God said that in the Old Testament, in the very first commandment, he commands it, and Jesus said that throughout the New Testament. So, by being a false teacher, she's giving people the impression that, well, so this is what Christians believe? Oh, so they're not... is what she's trying to do. She's trying to give people, I'm a Christian, but I'm not a hateful person. I'm a very tolerant, accepting person. But that's simply not Christianity. That's not what the religion is. So she's being very dishonest. And even if she doesn't fully know that she's being dishonest by this, she has to know she's not telling the truth in this. Like I said, it would be appropriate to say, I'm not a Christian. This is someone that maybe their parents went to church a little bit, but she doesn't even know the most base surface level thing. In fact, she's not even in the atmosphere of the surface, because this is so basic. This is about the first things you learn if you're learning about Christianity. You have to learn that this is the only God. Part of the Holy Trinity of Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and the Father. It's three elements of one God. But I just thought that you guys would enjoy this, that we can either, because it really struck me, especially like my first reaction was that ugly freak where, look, why do these girls always look this way? These girls that are anti-religion, anti-God. And it made me think of the cathedral and how many great works of art have been inspired by religion or that kind of thing. So hopefully this video has helped you out. And you can check out my other videos. We have a lot of good stuff on this channel for you to enjoy. And feel free to drop me a comment.